Hello, civilized people. It has been more than 5 days since the election. And honestly, I know, speaking for myself, that I'm spent with electoral politics. Hell, I highly suspect that you folks listening might also be exhausted with it. And you don't even work in the industry. But that said, this is the time of year when people who live politics sit back and do a bit of reflection, as it is, after all, how people grow. I'm sorry, that was a joke. The traditional thing to do after elections is to go hunting for scapegoats and to throw blame on literally everyone and everything that isn't yourself in the hopes of cobbling together a narrative that frames the shit you've said and done over the year in a positive light. Because admitting you are wrong, well, that's just for filthy peasants. So let your detractors bring their criticisms. Let them prove you wrong again and again as you embrace the most tried and true method of winning a debate when you know you are in the wrong. Dig in your heels, don't give up an inch, and just wait for them to lose their voice. Because today, on the Goths and Rome podcast, we talk about how the entire political industry is run by the insane. So, Colton, how you doing, man?
I'm all right. Just chilling.
Yeah, vacation going well?
Yeah, but pretty much until you called me. Not just kidding.
Yeah. I mean, admittedly, Colton and I talk about some of the shit that goes on, and there's always a lot of humor after election days, and it's always kind of funny to sort of watch as everybody, tries to cobble something together to try and save their reputations. But that being said, you know, Colt, I have seen a lot of people grasp at straws over the year. This one's been the big one. I don't think I've seen quite so extreme of hot takes on who really is to blame with this. But so, out of curiosity, what is the most batshit crazy take you have seen so far on who to blame this election on from the Democrats?
I mean, I haven't seen anything super bad shit crazy, but I'm seeing lots of the usual treatment where it's just like we're gonna blame men, we're gonna blame black men, we're gonna blame Latinos. And I mean, I think the craziest statement I've seen so far is um that they're looking forward to Latinos like families being deported, and it's like
Yep.
okay, that's the mask slipping, but
Yeah, that's the mask really slipping.
But that's just, random commenters and various social media. But like from, the talking heads and sources and from, actual Democrats, like, members that have faces and names that we all know of. It's the same. It's misogyny, it's racism that America just wasn't ready. That's the takeaway they're getting. Like Van Jones, it's like they're just not ready for a black woman president. It's just not
Yeah,
time. So
clearly. Oh my God. I think the most humorous that I've seen so far is Jesse Jackson having to come out and not talk about, race and instead having to come out and talk about, what is it, misogyny and crap like that. Like, seriously? This this is where we are now?
I mean, you'd think that it's pretty visible with how much that the Republicans love like Tulsi Gabbard, that they're not against women.
Yeah, this is true. The Lord, I can't remember their name, but the one of Kamala's campaign heads came out and said, we are the intellectual party, and we speak to rationality. And Trump comes out and he talks to racism and sexism and the baser instincts. But what we need to do is learn to speak to the emotional side. And it's like, so you're literally throwing a temper tantrum, talking about how you don't speak to the emotional.
Hasn't the right's like biggest, like gotcha and like laughing at the other side moments as being like, you guys, all of your arguments are from emotional standpoints for years now?
Yes, it was just asinine. The left really has seemingly lost the ability to, speak with the average person.
I've seen a
That's how it
couple of
seems.
people, come to the realization, right? But then they get, shouted down by their compatriots.
Yeah, it's a bit insane, but this is where we are.
It's yeah. Do you like see them having any sort of reform or like a change to more populism in the next election cycle? Or I mean, at the rate they're going, I don't see it.
Well, we'll get to that. Uh, but I think it's important to sort of go. This is what I guess I mentioned it to you before we started. Trump is not a Republican, not a business usual Republican. And the reason he is not a business as normal Republican is because business as normal Republicans have kind of not have kind of been proven irrelevant. You had Bush, and Bush was terribly unpopular. They liked him after 9/11, but that was extenuating circumstances. He was not terribly popular. Whenever he won his first election, he did not win the popular vote. He only won the second one because of 9/11. Then you had McCain. McCain was not popular. McCain lost. It could be argued that Obama won just by virtue of not being George Bush, while McCain was very much trying to be. Then you had Romney, who was just saying, the exact same thing that McCain was, and it didn't work. And so I think we're in one of those political paradigm shifts at the moment. You had, Teddy Roosevelt heralded in the progressive Republicans.
In
Um,
Democrats?
no, progressive Republicans. Teddy Roosevelt.
Oh, Teddy, I thought you were my bad.
Teddy Roosevelt heralded in the progressive Republicans. You had Abraham Lincoln sort of, well, you had a more centralized view under Lincoln in Republicanism. You had the Jacksonians. You had the Jeffersonians. And each of these figures sort of brought with them a political ideology that was so distinct that it sort of rewrote a lot of what, you know, the political status quo was. And Trump very much appears poised to be a figure like that, for better or for worse. And as there is no real crossover for Trump and a Republican on most policies, I mean, it could be argued he's anti abortion, but he removed it as a federal argument and took it out of his purview, which is a way which essentially removes it as, a federal issue that, the federal government would touch. Then you had gun rights, which that's just a constitutional thing. But you have not had somebody so, trigger happy with tariffs. That's not from either party. You have not seen someone so you know, determined for domestic to promote domestic trade in recent memory. Everybody's just been, okay with imports. And that's something where he's sort of redefining the Republican Party into a conservative esque populist movement. And there's something to be said for that. Meanwhile, to an extent, I do think that Biden sort of saw the writing on the wall. He kept the Trump tariffs. And I have to wonder if, if he had been more there, if he would have tried to reform, like a Bidenomics into a left wing populism. As right now, the media is calling Trump fake populism. It's not fake populism. Populism comes in a lot of flavors, and it's just Trumpian populism. I do think that the populist surge is going to be something that both the left and right are going to have to embrace sooner or later. And it just so happens that the right embraced it sooner because Romney lost and because McCain lost and because Republicans were looking for something else. And I think Republicans were already tired of the neoconservative movement going back to when Obama was first elected. I think they were over it. So I do think we will see some kind of shift in the DNC to try and take on a populist take. But I have in no way, shape, nor form seen any indication from the DNC itself that they're actually going to embrace it. They seem too determined to blame things that are wholly irrelevant to the problem that they had with this election. That's my thoughts anyway. What about you?
Well, mine aren't going to be nearly as long as your thoughts. Um, I don't necessarily, subscribe to the great man kind of notion that you're going with, just from the way that I've seen in history. It seems about every 70 years or so that American politics goes through a change, and usually the losing side finishes their change first. And I think the catalyst for that change, like you were saying, for the Republicans, was losing twice to Obama and the Democrats. They had to change and they had the guy running that facilitated that change because they had someone on that 20-man stage that was an outsider, and he immediately captured the public's interest, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. Uh, I u- I'm inclined to think that it requires a certain type of figure to beget that change, which I is why I ascribe it to a single figure. But these movements generally come up from the failings of the movements that came before, and no movement is perfect
No,
at
yeah,
all.
like
You know,
and we had the same almost with the Democrats in 2016 as well with Bernie, but their sort of manipulation of the Democratic caucuses was kind of stopped that movement in its tracks, and they couldn't go forward with their form of economic populism. And they had another chance of the economic populism in 2020 with Andrew Yang, and they didn't go with it then either because once again the Democrats all kind of fell behind Joe Biden in a kind of forced way. So that's my
yes,
kind of thoughts of it, is that they both movements had that happening in around the same 4 year period. It's just that the Democratic sort of structure in the way that they run their party is a lot more, they're pretty open to, I don't want to use the word rigging it because that's too extreme, at least for me to say it. But they're open to their own delegates making the decisions rather than the people making the decision.
I will put it in the words of their own lawyers. They are in no way obligated to provide free or fair primaries.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that
That's
now
their
in
own words.
2016, 2020, and 2024. That's a pattern.
Yes, yes, very much so. In a lot of ways, it seems like at this point, the obviously each sort of system of thought in this has certain industries that thrive, and the neoliberal and the neoconservative movements both had a lot of industries that thrived in them, and a lot of those sort of get brushed aside amidst populism. And so I think it's safe to say that at this point there's a lot of money being thrown at the DNC to protect that status quo
Yeah, the
from a
entrenched
hell of a lot of
interests.
industries, as there are a lot of interests, military, industrial, medical industries, pharmaceuticals, import export. There's a lot there that sort of has to be, taken into consideration. These are big industries that, sort of work hand in hand with the government. The only ones that really, there's not really many industries that are distinctly populism outside of companies that, for, you know, whether through a sense of moral leanings, believe they should, manufacture in the US, that because of that have higher costs and want other companies to come back. So it's generally more specific industry that benefits from specific company that benefits from populism rather than industry-wide benefits. So, yeah.
Hey, Robert, 1 second. I'm gonna grab a drink real quick.
Right. So with McCain and Romney losing, you sort of had the Republicans rejecting the neoconservative movement. And since Trump won the election last week, he has had to come forward and also very decisively reject the neocon movement. You have had, in the last few days, you have had a social media firestorm amongst his supporters, basically just outright saying, absolutely not. There should be no place for a Nikki Haley or a Pompeo on your cabinet or in your administration. And as of, I believe it was just a few hours before recording this, Trump had come out and agreed that, you know, I worked with them in the past. They were beneficial, but they will have no place in the new administration. And I find it kind of humorous that you're actually seeing Republicans. Lord, I find it humorous that most of the media was saying that Trump would have to work with Haley, only for him to win by not working with Haley, and then having his supporters adamant that she not be involved at all. So that very much tells me that you know they're digging a grave for the neoconservative movement. Thoughts?
I just find it funny that anybody thought that Nikki Haley would get a place in this at all. Like, I didn't even once think that Trump would consider Nikki Haley.
I'll be honest. I thought he might get Pompeo, but I in no way thought Haley. I never thought Haley. She she has a lot of baggage, and it's
Mhm.
not really beneficial.
Well, also, I think this just from a a viewpoint kind of interesting wise is that I've never seen, at least in a very long time, a public outcry to be like, do not have this person in your administration, and for the incoming, administration to actually take note of that and to change who they're going to put in, or to assuage the voters' fears, right?
Yeah, I have never seen that before. I have never seen that before, and I think it's also kind of telling that the fight for Senate leadership has now blown over into this as well.
Definitely.
As you have three candidates for Senate leader, majority leader in the Senate. You basically have two who are staunchly anti-Trump. What is it, Corman and Thale or Thane or
Or
something like that?
Thule or Thune.
Thule, Thune or Thu. Yeah, we're just going to assume he's from the mythical island of Thule.
Von Thule.
Yep, yep. And yeah, if you don't know what Thule is, give it a look. It's like the Norse take on a fantasy island. It's cool mythology. But anyway, you have those two, and you have Rick Scott from Florida, and you basically have two people that were palling around with Liz Cheney, who have been openly hostile to Trump since he ran in 2016, and then you have one guy who is pro-Trump running, and you have to ask yourself, Trump just won with he just won the popular vote with 2.5% over Harris. And you have to ask yourself, does the Republican Party really want, a staunchly anti-Trump Republican in charge of the Senate? I think the answer is probably no. I think even like disdain for those two is now trending on social media, which is kind of funny because Musk is essentially becoming very close to the Trump administration.
And nowadays, I have my own concerns about that, but I'll leave that be for now. You even have Musk and RFK advocating for people to call their senators and send in letters to their senators asking them to publicly endorse Rick Scott because that Senate Majority Leadership election is going to be have secret ballots. So,
Yeah, that seems pretty dirty, honestly. Though I question whether that Senate majority fight would still be there after you know you have the sort of the freshman class in. You know,
and on that, you mean like in the incoming senators or?
yeah, because some of those still haven't been called.
Mm,
Like it looks like McCormick is going to win Pennsylvania, so that would take him up to a 53 seat majority. And not everything they've called Arizona for what Gallego, the
just not
Democrat,
Carrie Lake.
not Kerry Lake. But I'm not sure what's going on there. I really do not know what's going on in Arizona.
And the
On
Nevada
what
one also got called for
and the Nevada one also got called for Jackie Rosen.
yep.
So yeah, Nevada I'm not shocked with. Arizona I'm a little bit shocked with. But you know what shocks me most of all about all of these, and is a
Mm.
wonderful example of why Republicans want the neocons gone.
That they have the gall to do this before the this is exactly why they're kind of traitors to their own party.
Oh no, it's more than that. Trump flipped. Well, Trump won 7 swing states. One of them was already, two of them are already pretty solidly Republican, three actually. But of those four, you still had a Democrat maintain the Senate. And care to guess how much basically the Republican head of Senate and the Democrat head of Senate all had both had PACs that contribute money and resources to Senate candidates. Care to guess which states didn't get jack shit from Mitch McConnell when he was running that?
Ugh.
Pennsylvania, Arizona, Nevada, Michigan, Wisconsin. But care to guess who got a crapload of money?
Who?
Hogan in Maryland, the guy who lost by 10 points.
Astounding.
Yep, he gave it to the neocon, but he didn't give it to the Trumpians, which is why you are wanting to see this shift among Republicans. They're sort of fed up with party leadership not actually helping the candidates that they put forward as candidates, which is, kind of just a thing that's been a running theme now. Uh, you had this happen also in 2018, which is, at least in my eyes, probably why you did not see the red wave that the media was going on manifesting. You certainly saw a surge in Republican voters, but it just didn't happen in a lot of places. And so in those cases, it was both Mitch McConnell and McCarthy not giving money or assistance to candidates. It's staggering. But that's why you're starting to see a huge push to get rid of those people. It's important to understand that while the Republicans have sort of gone through their metamorphosis of neocon to, you know, Trumpian populism, there are there are still some aftershocks that they are working through. So if you are actively a part of the Republican Party, for example, one of the best things you could probably do would just be to go to local Republican Party meetings and, try and be involved with the party itself to, you know, take one side or the other, as that's sort of the blocks from which everything else is built. Now, on that end, didn't really see anything like that amongst progressives and Democrats. So they're still fairly unified, even if what they're unified on is, or at least was, we don't know how it's going to shake out after the election. But at least they're unified in, spending money on their own people.
Hmm.
So, speaking of things that have come out since the election, what do you make of some of Trump's actions so far, and announcements that he has made?
Um, my own thoughts or like how it's going to affect things.
If you want, I can just start listing some, and you can give me your thoughts.
Okay, let's just do it that way.
The return of the World's Fair.
Cool. That's my thoughts.
Like, I actually think that's kind of cool.
Like
That's kind of cool.
it's neat, but I'm probably never going to attend. So okay.
Yeah, a a year-long national celebration for the 250th anniversary of America's Declaration of Independence.
I I don't think we can take that as a country. A half a year long celebration. Is that what you
A
said?
year long, actually a little over a year. It's supposed to start Memorial Day next year and go through 4th of July on 2026.
I don't. The longest holiday I've seen in my life is Toyotathon. Like I don't know how a year long celebration is supposed to look. Is there going to be like a banquet on Main Street every day, paid for by the federal government in every town? Like I don't. What is this supposed to look like? What am I excited for?
I don't know. I'm just banking on fireworks every day. Every
Commemorative
day.
T-shirts? Like
So much America.
yeah, like I'm sick of Toyotathon. I don't know if I can take much more long celebrations.
Yeah. So next up, the news that what is it? The Houthis have come forward and said, "Look, we're done now. We've done what we needed to do. We're finished." Okay.
Did they really? Like are they really finished?
I'd say they're finished for however long Trump's in office.
Nah, those people, it's kind of just like the what's it called? The announcement that women are now no longer having going to have casual sex with men. It's like that's what we wanted all along. Great. It's like, are you really, or is this going to be forgotten about in 3 weeks?
Yeah, we'll get to that one. Personally, I think that that whole issue is going to be something brokered because the whole conflict in Yemen, you basically have one side bankrolled by the UAE, the other side bankrolled by Saudi Arabia. And I don't think that Trump would get involved unless they stop impacting unless they don't stop impacting trade. I think that's it.
I mean, I could
I
see
think that
another
is the
situation where he'd get involved, and like Trump tries to push the signing and completion of the Abraham Accords, and the Saudis say they're not gonna sign unless you know they win.
yeah, I can see that. I can see that. Next up, you have Russia coming out and saying not only is the Western world not an enemy to Russia, but that they are wanting to negotiate with Trump to end the conflict in Ukraine.
I've seen other less charitable translations of that, so I'm hesitantly leaning towards positive on that.
I'm leaning towards positive on that one. There's demand amongst Republicans to stop funding Ukraine. I do think that Ukraine will have to concede territory. I don't see a world in which Ukraine does not have to concede territory. But the war would end, and that's probably for the best, given the massive quantity of casualties that Ukraine has taken. With the important difference being that, Russia can sustain a hell of a lot more casualties.
Hmm.
Next up, you have the leader of NATO coming out and saying that if Trump surrenders any part of Ukraine, the U.S. will be expelled from NATO.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Are they trying to get Trump to be like, oh, like try me? You know? Are they trying to?
Uh, I think there are going to be a lot of alliances get called into question over the coming, months.
I just don't understand. Like, what sort of back? Why do the vassal states think their opinion matters?
I know, right?
Like,
Yes.
you're
If you are Europe, if you are in Europe, or you are Australia, or you are a nation which borders the U.S., or a nation in Asia that has closer ties to the US than China, then I'm sorry, you are a puppet state. I hate to break it to you, but your government is generally obliged to follow the overtures that the United States gives you, because by and large, your nation is utterly dependent upon the US economically through either how you conduct international trade for goods from the United States, or basically just trade being facilitated by the United States. So, yeah,
and no
I'm
offense to,
sorry.
anybody from those places, but like we don't coup you guys. We just, basically control it.
Yeah, it's kind of what we do. Um,
Like, be
I
thankful you're
mean,
not a South American government.
yes, be very thankful you're not South American. We're far we're nowhere near as heavy-handed with you a lot as we are with rando South American country number three. You know, they just get the coup treatment, and that's that.
God bless them.
Uh, See, democracy is only for us, okay? We tell you what to do. Now,
They get to run their own places. It's just that when we decide something has to go some way, they have to just begrudgingly agree.
yes, exactly. Exactly. Next up, I think that and this is one that's sort of been boiling for a while, and it's our special relationship with the United Kingdom.
Hmm.
Did you know that the British Labour Party, which now controls the British government, sent people over across the pond to canvass for Kamala Harris in Pennsylvania?
I did know that.
Well, I'm assuming if you did know that,
Yes.
then I also assume you know that it is highly illegal for a foreign government to do that.
I just, once again, I'm just kind of struck by the hard headedness where I don't know much about the UK politics, right?
Yeah,
But I did, see the articles and look at, the results of their election, and it seems like the right had more votes. It's just they split their vote between the more extreme right and the conservatives. And Labor just had the same amount of vote as always.
kind of.
They're
It
they're
it Labor's vote was where it needed to be to win an election, and the British, fairly disillusioned with the Tories, had Nigel Farage's party but both the Tories and the Labour Party actively work together to keep Farage and his party off the ballot virtually everywhere. I will say that I have been reading a bit, and it looks like you might very well get some snap elections in Germany,
Yeah.
in um France, and in the United Kingdom in response to Trump's presidency. Because if Trump decides to hold a grudge against the current regime in power in the United Kingdom, first off, he's well within his rights because they tried to manipulate US elections by getting involved. And that's a huge no no. At least the French didn't do that. Uh, Macron still has power in France, but that is very tedious. So I'm really not sure what's going to go on there. But I think that the big powers in Europe, if you will, are about to undergo a bit of. I think they're going to have to eat some humble pie, some very real humble pie, as they realize that look, we're dependent upon these people, and these governments will not work with them. You know,
It's also interesting.
it is. I will say I have heard that a lot of French legislators are quite confused by how Trump won again. And it seems like a number of the progressive members of the French Senate very much believed what the mainstream media were in the US were saying, despite other parties having told them otherwise. So just going to leave that there. But other than that, you have Saudi Arabia is now, oh, excuse me, Qatar is now expelling all Hamas leaders from the country. That's another thing that's happened. So it looks like they're jonesing to, end things pretty quickly.
Yeah, it
So,
seems like the rest of the world is kind of course correcting to an effective U.S. government and how they react to that.
yeah, it seems like Trump is kind of hard to read, and very frequently he gives the impression that he's willing to make up his mind on the fly. And that makes him very hard to predict. And what that does is that it's actually kind of terrifying to be in a position opposed to somebody like that because you don't know what's going to happen. You, for example, with the issue in Yemen, you have people that will, want to end that conflict because they don't know what the fuck Trump's going to do. They have no goddamn clue, and they know that if they got involved, that it's over. The U.S. got involved, it's over.
Yeah, and they're trying to fix any problems that they might have, regarding U.S. foreign policy before they have to make that first phone call with Trump.
Yeah, I'm. I know that the Prime Minister of the UK has spoken with Trump, and I think it would have been very funny to be a fly on the wall during that conversation.
God, I wish I had the NSA's power.
So that's another thing that's been announced. The FISA courts are supposedly going to be gutted. So it looks like Trump intends to, take a fire axe to the Patriot Act.
Robert, do not tease me with that.
That's something he said. I'm just saying.
If the Patriot Act can actually ever be repealed and not replaced with anything and just repealed, I will build a shrine to that man. I don't I've never seen the government give up power over something it now like it gives itself.
Yeah.
I'll
Well, it.
believe it when I see it.
I mean, it looks like the government's about to hack apart a lot of things of power that it gave to itself. I don't give the Department of Education very good odds for surviving the next 2 years.
Oh yeah, same. I just can't fathom the idea of the Patriot Act going away. That's just all I'm saying.
And while I don't think we will return to a gold standard, Trump has essentially, you know, the head of the Federal Reserve has said that you know, he won't resign if Trump asks him to. And to my understanding, Trump has indicated, well, in that case, I can remove his security clearance, removing his ability to operate. So it looks like he's willing to, take a sledgehammer to a lot of stuff. And I don't think we'll truly see an end to the Federal Reserve, but I do think it would be reined in a bit. I don't think there is a snowball's chance in hell that Ron Paul is involved in a government and the Federal Reserve isn't, gutted in a lot of ways, or at least subjected to a lot of changes.
But it would be cool.
It would be kind of nice. Ron Paul finally gets his wish after, a decade out of office. God love the man. He is so consistent. That is the one thing about Ron Paul. Like he always said the same things. He never really, swayed. Now, I think the other thing that's going to be kind of interesting is the role that Elon plays.
How personal are we willing to get on this podcast?
Uh, I know what you want to talk about, and I'll actually preempt that with this. Cole and I have certain reservations regarding Elon Musk's pack. We have worked in the industry for a while, and we have come to know a lot of people. And we are well aware of someone intricately involved in the organization that has essentially the opposite of a Midas touch. And that person is one of they're very high ranking amongst the leadership of that organization. And we have seen them crash so much to the ground. So I would like to think that they are only temporary. I'm hoping they're only temporary, but I have very real reservations about Musk's utility going forward, given some of the people involved with the organization. And I say that, professionally. I have just seen, there are people that have a certain reputation to the point where you don't employ them really in any industry. And he's got one of those people.
I'll just say, in the best case scenario, they hemorrhage money and they're run very very unorthodoxly and a lot of mismanagement and malpractice, and that's the best case scenario if that person is in the position I think they are.
Yes. We have not confirmed exact position,
It's
but
public though. We it's
it's probably worse than we're imagining, if I'm being honest.
yeah, and to be charitable, it's not like I said, best case scenario, you take the richest guy in the world's money and you kind of mismanage it. Best case scenario, not that big of a
Best
deal.
case. Best case. Worst case scenario, you wind up in 6 years of lawsuits, shamelessly break the law, and yeah, like for example, the lawsuit claiming that they were, paying for voter registration is false. I know the individual well enough to know they would not make that mistake.
Hmm.
It is very legal. Musk was paying people to sign petitions, and that is perfectly legal. Requiring somebody to be, registered to vote to sign a petition, not illegal. So that's the thing. That fell within the confines of the law, as it is written. So, you know,
No, yeah.
but
Looking back on it now, it very much has the DNA of the person that we're talking about. Of like being like, yep, this is, feels a little sketchy. It works though. We've had the lawyers go over it. There's gonna be questions, but
I mean, not to be fair, not everything that he's done has been legal.
no,
I
yeah.
can recall a couple instances, but yeah. So we have reservations there. That being said, Elon Musk spent $44 billion buying Twitter, and all he got was all three branches of government.
Yeah, and now JD Vance is threatening the EU on his behalf,
Exactly.
which I would say is a pretty good return of investment.
That is a fantastic return on investment.
Once again, though, I guess, since we're kind of talking a little bit of shit here, I would say that that does concern me. Like, I like the idea of it as an American and being like, yeah, the stupid EU can't regulate our things because they're too important and we're our things and we can run our things, right? Perfectly acceptable Americanism argument. Now, JD Vance and who he has previously worked for immediately, you know, um, bending the knee to corporate politics is very concerning.
Yeah.
So, you take the good with the bad. And that's a pretty big bad, but what can you do? You can't do anything.
I mean, honestly, I think that I personally regard freedom of speech as sort of that's something that everybody should have.
Hmm.
And Europe has not been abiding by that. I mean, how many, Lord, what was it a few years ago? There were so many people like that had been tracked down to their homes for saying offensive shit on Twitter, but they weren't even bothering investigating armed robberies in Britain. It gets to a point to where you've sort of got to, intervene. And I think that this is the kind of intervention that would do Europe some good.
And I
It needs to,
totally understand that under an ideological bend, but
yeah,
also there is the Americanism, like when I think it was the UK tried to regulate Microsoft. I was of the argument that's just like, listen, man, the UK needs Microsoft more than it needs anything else. It's like you can't regulate it. It's like, sorry, you're in all of your government computers, your banks, and everything else run on probably Microsoft. Your country will shut down if you stop working with these people and force Microsoft to leave your country. So it's kind of
you,
like that same thing where it's like, maybe you should have made your own software.
yeah. So, and I do think that moving on to the next topic and all this, I do think that Trump has extended arguably one of the biggest olive branches to the opposing side that I have ever seen a political candidate offer. For those of you who are unaware, Kamala Harris's campaign actually went into debt, and many, like virtually all of her staff, are apparently not going to be getting their final paychecks as they've run out of money to pay them. This is in part because, and yes, it happened, the Kamala Harris campaign bribed Oprah with $1 million to get a Kamala Harris endorsement on camera. So, like, there's been a lot of shit like that going on.
You know how much the
And
Trump campaign paid for Joe Rogan?
not a penny.
Yeah.
Trump basically got earned media, whereas Harris was essentially having to buy it. And anyway, Trump has offered the olive branch of essentially offering to pay off that debt for her, seemingly, so that those people actually get paychecks. Because Trump, I don't think, spent a third of what Kamala did on this campaign. Kamala Harris's campaign, not the PACs, the campaign spent close to $1 billion. Trump spent far less. So, you know, I have, in my eyes, that seems like a huge olive branch. Like that seems like, a very humanist approach. These people oppose me, these people hate me, but I'm willing to make sure they get a paycheck, whereas you can't.
Hmm.
Thoughts?
No, yeah, I think that'd be a good thing to do, and I hope that she accepts that olive branch.
I hope she does. Uh, there are a lot of, I think I've said this before. Whenever it comes to candidates in our industry, there are good candidates, there are bad candidates, and the worst kind of candidates are the ones that don't pay you. And a lot of the people that won't get paid are just hourly, workers who cared, got a job with them, were running day in, day out operations in a big city or in a region of a state. And, you know, they're hardworking people. It's a stressful job. And in a lot of instances, they're having to, like, if they're having to drive somewhere for the campaign, they're having to cover their own gas costs and wait on it to be reimbursed by the campaign. And yeah, that doesn't, like, if the money ran out, they're not getting reimbursed for the shit they did. And well, Harris is no longer running for president, so that organization can basically just go bust. So I think there's sort of a life expectancy on how long that will take, on how long there is to do that. I know that Trump is meeting with Biden in a few weeks, I believe, to go over things. But that's that, I suppose. The next thing of interest to go over is that Trump is apparently taking steps to stop leaks from inside of his, inner circle. As apparently somebody came out the other day and told Ben Shapiro that Trump was going to hire Pompeo. And apparently several people inside of the Trump camp were letting little tidbits of who was going to get hired leak and brought on board leak. And apparently somebody was fired over saying that. So they've already found, one person who is leaking information. So it seems like they're being very proactive about that.
I hope the Daily Wire paid that person well for that leak.
I hope they did too. And next up, probably the most comical, is the talk that Alex Jones, the man, the myth, the legend, will be Donald Trump's press secretary.
I haven't seen
And
anything more about this since we talked about it last.
I haven't either. But Jones has said on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, that he accepts the role as press secretary for the Trump administration. Candace Owens, another one of the big Republican speakers, has come out and said that it does, she will personally pay the salary of Alex Jones for him to be Trump's press secretary. You have seen Don Jr. come out and say that he wants Alex Jones to be his father's press secretary. Not because he thinks Alex Jones gets everything right, but because he thinks that it's the press secretary that the mainstream media deserves.
I would love to see it only because I would love the headlines. To tune in every once in a while for him to just yell at people.
Yeah.
If only if he's given that kind of free reign. If he's like told to like, be buttoned up and to not be Alex Jones, then like whatever. But
I no, I think if you're going to have Alex Jones, you got to have Alex Jones. And honestly, do you think it's a smart move or no?
no, I think it's a spiteful, hilarious move. Is it smart? No.
I actually think it's kind of ingenious. I actually think it's kind of ingenious. With my logic being that the mainstream media is pretty hostile to Trump. There's no way around it. You had like if you watch CNN, MSNBC, any of them on election night, these people look like they were going to cry. Like there is no way of getting it's not disappointment, but like they were going to weep. Like Jimmy Kimmel, they actually did whenever Trump won. On stage in front of an audience.
Ugh.
And honestly, I think it's an ingenious move just because most media outlets have pretty heavy handedly lied about Trump. They have made all kinds of claims. Like, do you like, and some of them are just asinine. Like, what was it, the Gorilla Channel? Like, the mainstream media ran with the fact that Donald Trump was complaining to the White House staff that the televisions didn't have the channel that had the gorillas beating the shit out of each other all the time. And it's like, what? Then you had them, claiming that he had removed a bust of Martin Luther King from the Oval Office, which he had moved it to like a different table in the Oval Office. They had a field day with the fact that like he apparently went out and had 2 scoops of ice cream. Like there was tons of just asinine stuff that they ran with trying to attack Trump on it.
You
So I
can't.
think
I mean,
it's
compared to
I
Joe
think
Biden, who loves ice cream.
I think that it is absolutely fair play to turn around and throw out a press secretary that's not going to answer any questions and just attack the media because the media will sort of be obligated to show it.
I
They are
disagree.
going to be, I mean, admittedly, it's Alex Jones. He's probably going to claim that they're like child eating goblins, but
Yeah,
still,
and that's just bad press. That's what I'm saying. Where they're just gonna be like, it seems like Trump right now is a lot more subdued, and not making crazy Twitter posts every day, every few hours. And that was a lot of the reporting going on all the time. It
yeah,
seems like if you just have someone that's like Alex Jones on that, then it's gonna just make that. Like we're gonna get funny clips and stuff, but it's just gonna be more things for them to just always attack the Trump administration for when
yeah,
you know right now he's trying to extend the olive branch, right? And it's just like at the moment right now it wouldn't work. Would it be hilarious? Yes. Is it completely spiteful? Also yes.
I don't think they'd ever accept the olive branch because I think that in the wake of this, we've seen a paradigm shift in politics with neoconservatism effectively, not standing the test of time and being replaced with Trumpian populism. I think it's safe to say that the mainstream media died this election cycle. Who is more important with this election? Rachel Maddow, Hannity, or Joe Rogan?
I think that's the wrong question. I think the
What do you
right
mean?
question is, how long are people over the age of 58 going to still be alive? And that's how long that they're still relevant for.
Exactly. The thing is that more young people are getting, information from sources that are on YouTube or on Twitter or on Reddit. And that's where they're going for their information. And the mainstream media, the one with the youngest audience is Fox. They are the ones that probably have the most longevity left in them. But NBC, ABC, these organizations are very much dying. And I think we saw the cracks in that really emerge this election cycle. Because I do think that Joe Rogan was more influential than, a Hannity or a Maddow or a Holt. All of them were just the people who were professionals were cast aside. The population wanted somebody else who was, apolitical to talk about it in the form of Joe Rogan. And that's who they wound up trusting.
Well,
So
I don't think he was
I
apolitical. I think that people, have a connection to like a Joe Rogan or to a Theo Vaughn rather than, like nobody's gonna stop Brett Baer on the street for a selfie and an autograph. Like, you know what I mean? Like he couldn't fill up an arena by himself. He doesn't have.
yeah, I
He
mean,
doesn't like. There's no connection there. He's just a talking head.
yeah, I agree. I agree. He's no Walter Cronkite, but still, it seems like we're sort of seeing the mainstream media death throes. That's really what I'm getting at. We are starting to see that, and again, they still have influence. Older people very much preferred Donald Trump and preferred Kamala Harris in this election. The portion of the population that still trusts the mainstream media very much skewed toward Harris, even though that age bracket normally skews much more so Republican. So, they still have that level of influence there, but you don't see as many people, I assume most of our listeners knew their grandparents. No doubt there was a day and age when you go over to your grandparents and they'd be sitting there, watching the news. Uh, like, a nightly ritual would be, Bill O'Reilly. That's at least what it was for, my grandparents, even though very much Democrats. They liked Bill O'Reilly for some reason. But yeah. And one of the things that I've seen come out of this, and I don't think people get, is that you've had a lot of people on the left say, we need our own Joe Rogan. And the reality is that the left doesn't need their own Joe Rogan. They just need to be able to appeal to the kind of people that listen to Joe Rogan. You know,
I mean, they had Joe Rogan.
they
He's a
did.
comedian from L.A. who is big into drugs. Like they had Joe Rogan.
They had him. But you know, eventually, you've had it and you lost that bracket. That should have been easy, but you don't have that anymore. So, Colton,
Hmm.
let's close things out with predictions. What do you think is the fate of the Democratic Party following this?
I think that they have to adapt some sort of populist and away from the identity politics. They have to. That's otherwise they're going to continue losing. Um, I mean, obviously it depends on the fate of the Republicans too, whether they the neocons keep trying and they actually get a candidate out there, then the Democrats have a real chance. They don't have to change. Um, but as of right now, it's looking like the neocons are being stamped out of the Republican Party. So the Democrats have to do the same thing in order to remain competitive. and definitely drop all of their kind of ID poll issues. I think that's what I think. That's what has to happen for them.
Well, personally, I think the Democrats are in an unenviable position. I don't believe that progressive policies will sell nationwide. I similarly don't think that the neoliberal, neoconservative faction within that party, like your Liz Cheney and, you know, Bill Clinton-esque sort of merger there, can win electorally. I don't think they have the, you know, mandate to actually win an election. People have pretty openly been refuting that for ages. Even Obama could be sort of seen as a he ran on not being, a neoliberal or a neoconservative, and that was sort of what propelled him to popularity. So there's demand there for something different. But what do you do when when the two factions in your party are diametrically opposed? The Democrats built a very big tent party, but the problem is everybody inside of that party kind of fucking hated each other. You have, Arabs, the Muslim population. Who would have thought that, your Muslim population might have some differences with the LGBTQ community? Could you have seen that coming, Colton?
No.
No, not at all. Me neither. So obviously, fundamentalist Islamists, fundamentalist Muslims, uh, have they get along swimmingly and agree with everything with the LGBTQ community. And what about your very pro-choice people and Hispanics? I mean, who would have thought that Catholics might have had a problem with abortion? Did you see that coming? Exactly. I know what that silence means. So, honestly, it looks like they've sort of garnered a lot of factions, but those factions don't agree about goddamn anything. So it feels like the Obama coalition has essentially died in a lot of ways, where they're going to have to, pick up what's left after, Trump, and then really start pushing for the working class vote again. And I'm not sure how easy of a time they will have with that, given that they are going to be financially dependent upon the remnant neocon and neoliberal movement. Thoughts, Colton?
It's about time we wrap it up then.
Uh, you have thoughts on that idea?
Yeah, I agree pretty much completely.
Yeah, it's. I think it'll be interesting to see if you know the people in our positions actually make peace with it. But there has been one person who has actually said truth to it within the Democratic Party, and it is actually one of the leadership figures of the Democratic Party itself, essentially calling the Kamala campaign $1 billion disaster. And so at least they're admitting some fault, which is the first step to improving. So, with that being said, to you poor bastards still listening, thank you for having done so. We hope you learned something. And if you enjoy listening to two random assholes ramble, please like and subscribe. And we look forward to seeing you in our next video. Have a good
And
day, everybody.
one
Oh,
final closing statement from myself. If you are a random passing by journalist that happens to listen to our video, um, you do not have my permission to quote anything I've said during the part about Elon's pack, and you can kindly go fuck yourself. Journalists deserve to be bullied.
Amen.